democratization that I decided to link up with other African women so that we could look at areas of conflict in Africa. With my background in mediation and arbitration and broadly under alternative dispute resolution, we decided to form an organization called PanAfrican Solidarity, which is FARS in short, and which is the Solidarity of Women in English. And we decided to train, empower, and support women in areas like, at the time, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Rwanda, Burundi, the broader Great Lakes region, and on the upper part of the East, Sudan, and so on. We have a lot of friends when we are locked down joining us with the children. So in brief, that has been the work that I've done in the early part of the change, and thereafter moving into business, both supporting small businesses, supporting development agencies, and then started sitting on boards. I've sat on from listed companies to unlisted, to the Reserve Bank of South Africa, as well as not-for-profit organizations. So I regard myself as somebody who is involved in the transformation of the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ma'am Thandi. I've also did a bit of background check on you. I'm sure you did a background check on us. So in times like COVID, we've seen how the Reserve Bank is so involved in terms of making sure that we actually survived this and ensuring that we maintain our inflation target as per mandate. What was it like sitting on a board like a Reserve Bank? Just name a few challenges, just paint the picture for us.
Thank you, Koketso. I think sometimes there is a misunderstanding of the role of reserve banks because it's the only one of a kind in a country that support the monetary policies of the country. And it is therefore important that it's not equated to commercial banks. And it has got in South Africa and in a lot of jurisdiction a regulatory oversight over commercial banks to ensure issues of liquidity, to ensure issues around interconnectedness across the globe in relation to monetary and fiscal policies. So serving on the board as a non-executive director, we had fiduciary and governance oversight. It was important that we ensured the transition, particularly at the time, from an apartheid-based economic and monetary system to one that was embedded under the constitution of the country. So there were lots of critical areas of policy changes, ranging from the financial, as you indicated, Koketso, issues around how we manage inflation, issues around how we ensure that we support the banking infrastructure in the country. So I spent about 12 years on the bank.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Thandi. Also to note, Ma'am Thandi, are you specifically interested in the petroleum industry or the vehicle industry? Because I've noted on the boards that you sit on, they're sort of industry related. Is your preference geared towards the petroleum industry or motoring, or how was that decision made?
I believe, and it's my philosophy, that as the youngest democratically independent country in Africa, we had to look firstly in the continent and as well as look outside. And whilst African countries have been politically independent since Ghana, I'm not counting clearly Ethiopia and others that were never enslaved or colonized. We have had political independence. However, we've struggled to get economic sustainability. And so from being a human rights lawyer and activist, I decided that I needed to use my skills in the economic environment. Hence, as you indicate, I sit on a number of boards that are the bedrock of our economy. I have been in the mining sector, and at present, I'm on 3 what I would call strong pillars of the economy in South Africa: the motor industry, serving on the Toyota boards, as well as I chair the BP Southern Africa board, that is in the clearly petroleum and industry, as well as keep my hand on the pulse and ensure that I can support the transformation of the economy in those critical areas.
Thank you, Ma'am Thandi. We've also noted your passion around transformation. I was listening to the interview you had, I think it was 19, where you spoke about transformation, specifically when you were going into your BP role. And we've seen you've made waves in that path. That's very commendable. Thank you for that brief profile, very interesting. Participants, please don't be shy to post your questions. If you've got questions regarding Ma'am Thandi's background, we will note them and we'll ask her those questions. I'm going to hand over, I believe Itumeleng just joined the call now. I'm going to hand over to Itumeleng to talk a bit about our Pan-African Leadership Networking Forum. Itumeleng, over to you.
Hi. Oh, thanks, Kogetso. I hope everybody can hear me. Sometimes I'm a little bit, challenged, when it comes to these things. Good morning, everybody. Just to give a brief synopsis, as to what actually inspired, this whole, idea of putting together the Pan-Africanist Leadership Networking Forum. Typically, over the years, what has been happening, I've been working on, getting young people, to pretty much, explore and get out of, the boundaries of South Africa and explore the world. So over the years, then, the same young people would proceed into universities and into the world of work. But right now, with Covid-19, and quite a lot has been happening. This organization, the Pan-Africanist Leadership Networking Forum, is pretty much, to get South African professionals across all sectors, to interlink and interact, with their counterparts elsewhere on the African continent. It's very crucial that we do, and begin to really share ideas as to what are the challenges, what could we do better, because COVID is going to be with us, for quite some time to come. The virus will not go away simply because there are easing of restrictions, wherever that may be, on our continent. But, it's crucial, that we actually engage and, have the likes of Advocate Orleyn coming in, to really guide us, and give us a sense of where could the glitches be, be it, in corporate, or some of us, could be entrepreneurs, and stuff like that. But most importantly, for everybody, be it in Kenya, be it in Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Botswana. I know also Lesotho, has actually, logged in as well. And some of our African sisters and brothers, who live in London, are also logged in. So it's important that all of us, interlink and interact, and really begin to plan, on our own, without, outsiders, outside, the continent, so to speak. Have it to what are we going to do with Africa, into the future. So I think the long and short of it, so thanks, for giving me the opportunity, is really to welcome everybody. And whilst the Advocate Orleyn, has been an anchor in terms of getting all of us together, I hope that after this, meeting from various countries, in Africa, wherever we are now friends, we're brothers and sisters, and then let's get together and really, get, to discuss, serious issues, as they affect, our various regions and countries and our continent at large. Thanks, Koki. Over, back to you.
Thank you so much, Itu, for that. What you mentioned, you touched on a very important aspect that I think as young people, we are the future of this country. I'm not just saying it. So it's important that we have these critical conversations so that we're able to maneuver and guide those who come after us. So without even further delay, we're going to dive into the first theme. So with COVID-19, a lot of things have really changed. I mean, how we work has changed, how people make money have changed. You know, we've seen how retailers need to reinvent their strategy in order to survive in these critical times. So, Mam Thandi, the implications of COVID-19 on professionals and entrepreneurs. I mean, sitting on the boards that you sit in, I'm sure you have also witnessed these changes affect the bottom line firsthand. What are the implications for us as professionals and entrepreneurs during and post-lockdown? And how can we maneuver during these implications? Would you share with us your thoughts on?
Thank you, Koketso. I'm going to talk from the context of the African continent. As a continent that has got a very young, a lot of young people, a high percentage of our continental citizenry is very young. And therefore, it's important that we contextualize it within ourselves. That's the one thing. And as they speculate, that most probably is giving us the edge and the advantage that we had, the epidemic has not been as bad in Africa as in other continents. Secondly, we are having countries that are the poorest in the world. And somebody once said, and I'm not going to attribute this to any particular person because quite a number of people are attributed to have said this, that never let a good crisis go to waste. And I believe the young professionals in our continent need to step up, need to look at what are the opportunities in relation to what has happened. The economies are bad. There is no doubt about that. We have challenges of issues of liquidity. Where people are in the private sector, there's going to be possibilities of retrenchments. And if one has to look, you've got to say to yourself, am I a candidate for a retrenchment? Or am I looking at this as an opportunity, either within the company itself or within the new areas that are going to develop post COVID-19, and say to myself, how am I going to position myself? Don't allow things to happen to yourself. You need to have the mindset of saying, as a young African person who is a professional, you've got opportunities that you can start taking risks on. If you've had an entrepreneurial spirit, where can you start looking, as you are in most instances working in your own home in a lockdown situation? So those for me are the critical ways to look at how you can maneuver through what is seen globally as an economic depression that has not been seen since the 1920s.
Okay, Mam Thandi, thank you so much. But you touched on something that is very true in terms of finding the opportunities to make yourself relevant during these times. I remember just yesterday, I was in a telecon at work and I was pitching a new idea on a new process. And yes, we have these webinars, but funny thing is people do not always show their face. So when you are presenting, you're not able to see whether people are for your idea or against it. Then it made me realize that I'm so good at reading people's cues when I see them. But when I'm on the telephone and I'm not able to see them, how do I ensure that I really capture people's attention? So I found myself on the internet trying to see how can I upskill myself to start presenting to people who I cannot see and make sure that engaging is something I can do beforehand in terms of to get their buy-in. So you touched on that very important aspect. I'm going to hand over to Maru to let us know if we have any questions from the panel, from our visitors regarding this topic. Maru, over to you. Okay, I had one question from Hilda who asked whether the YouTube link will remain available after the webinar, Maru. Do we have an idea in terms of that? Okay, I have one question for you, Ma'am Thandi. I mean, you mentioned about we need to open up ourselves to opportunities. If we wanted to explore the entrepreneurial route, we should go for it. In your view, Ma'am Thandi, is this the right time for people to go into the entrepreneurship journey? I mean, I know entrepreneurship by itself is so tough, you know, but is it the right time for people to venture into their entrepreneurship journey, or will that depend on the industry they want to go into?
Thanks, Koketso. There's never a right time, or looking at it differently, any time is the right time. It depends on you, your convictions. It depends on your personal circumstances. And it depends on the industry that you are looking at and what support structures you have around you. I've just found out this morning that a lady who was in the mainstream financial services just dropped her job, resigned, and has started a factory in an area in South Africa that has been the bedrock of clothing in Msinga in KwaZulu-Natal. These factories had closed at the time that the competition from China could not be met by the local manufacturers. So she's opened a factory, has employed 50 people, and they're making masks, they're making sanitizers, and she's looking at other issues. So it's difficult to say. She has seen the gap, she has taken it. And she's now trying to market herself. And she was on a mainstream television program this morning in South Africa. I've been approached by young people who want to be in the energy sector, and they've indicated what their interests are. And what I normally do as I engage with young people is to say, how old are you? Do you have family responsibilities? Do you have bonds to pay? And that may be the right time for you, because other than what is on your back, you don't have to take a responsibility for anybody else. Whereas if you've got a 7-month-old baby, you are in a secure position right now, you've got to say to yourself, can I afford to lose this? So it's, each person has really got to do self-reflection at this time. But the opportunity when the economy is low, as I understand Warren Buffett has once said, that when they fear, you must go in. And when they go in, you must fear.
Very profound. Do we have any questions yet, Maru? Because I see chats trickling in.
Thanks, Maru. I suppose I'm being asked this question because I'm in that profession. There are a number of opportunities that have presented themselves. I know of young people are putting up an app for lawyers to link up. I know of a number of, so if you use whatever profession it is, I can even go to the medical profession, where there's also now a distant examination. But each and every profession, you've got to say to yourself, how can I engage with my clients? I think Koketso gave a very important example. You may have to go to a voice clinic now to make sure that you modulate your voice. You have to go and think about what is the best way to present yourself, either without being seen, either without having or being on a video link. However, the critical thing is to look at what are the legal areas that are coming to the fore. Clearly, IT, IP, and a myriad of other areas that you can upskill yourself as you have slowed down in your practice at the moment.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Mary, I'm going to pause on that because that question really ties in with our theme number 3. So I'm going to ask that we park that question for when we get to theme 3, then we can tackle it a bit. Let me move on to the second theme. But I believe we've already touched on how can one be adaptive and adaptable. Mam Thandi, what are your views on the new normal? What do you think the new normal will be during and post lockdown?
Talking to young people like yourselves, it is so critical to be agile and to be adaptable. The new normal is that we are seeing the 4th industrial revolution coming to us. We are not going to it. It is coming to us. And how do you manage that? The new normal is sitting now at home. As you can imagine, I'm an over 60 years old person. I have been in South Africa in terms of the new regulation. I've been told that I've got to still stay at home under level 4 because I'm one of the vulnerable people. So now one would say, well, you should be pensioned anyway. But as long as I think young, as long as I feel I've got something to contribute, I'm starting to think of new ways. In my field of practice, for instance, before the lockdown, I was supposed to have done a disciplinary inquiry that involves a senior executive. So I've said to the company, why don't we do it virtually? Send me the documents. Let's make this happen because you can't keep it hanging on. What if we can't open up as the legal profession fully until the end of the year? The company can't operate in that environment. So the new norm is to be adaptable. We will most probably get back to our offices, but it is critical that we the office as the be all and end all. So for me, it's very critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Thandi. Now I'm going to loop in the question that Echo has asked. With this COVID-19, what are the emerging markets that we are seeing that are going to come up, or what are the evolving industries that are going to come up either in the short term or in the long run, Ma'am Thandi? Your views?
Okay. I'm talking to young professionals, people that would be most probably planning or having young families. Agile working is very important for you. And therefore, it is very important to look at the areas that would be very open to agile working. If I give an example of BP, where I'm the chair, we have been promoting agile working long before COVID-19. And so when this happened, it was easy because everybody had a laptop, everybody had connectivity. The system enabled people to just on the Monday pick up their laptops and be home and be able to operate as if they were in the office. So generically, that is very important. Specifically talking about industries, clearly in Africa, as they normally have said, they said, all the politicians, everybody who could get into a plane and go to Europe for medication can't do that. People have got to look inward in Africa now. That is an opportunity. You've got to say to yourself, what ways can we ensure that in the continent we can be self-sufficient around health? The second area, we've always been said to be the food basket of the world, but we have not taken advantage of that. They're always saying that China wants to come to Africa because then they can engage with food issues in the continent. We have to take advantage of that ourselves. I know in people's minds they say, but we don't have the capital. Find it. This is an opportunity to look at it and find ways on how you can partner, how you can link up, how you can work to make your dreams a reality.
Thank you, Ma'am Thandi. Maru, I've seen a few questions. Do we have questions for Ma'am Thandi?
That is a very broad question. And I'm trying to understand when he says FinTech, whether he means in a specific area or across the board. Thanks, Maru, for helping in that, in explaining that and expanding on that. That area of development has already been with us. One has got to say within the continent, because because it transcends geographic boundaries. You can be sitting anywhere in the world and you would be able to engage with it without being in that area specifically. But how is it targeted to the continent? So it's very critical for one to research this, because you may be getting into a space that is already crowded. And therefore, it's quite critical in terms of saying to yourself, at what level into this area. For instance, if you look at the banks at the upper end, they clearly have been looking at it. I mean, there's been movement in South African context of companies that started as medical aid sector companies that have moved into that area right now. I take, a number of examples. And there's other companies that have done a similar thing where you say you register as a financial services advisor or agent. And so it's where you want to play. The area that has been very interesting has been the lower end of the market. How do you penetrate that? I mean, if you take these small issues, not small, but the areas where Kenya had already started with PESEL, where there's been quite a number of areas that local people, sometimes supported by international players, have moved into. And so you've got to say to yourself, do I run with this on my own, competition looking like, or do I link up with an international partner? So there's lots of thinking to do in this area.
Just to also add on with that, I mean, given that our platform, this specific one, is international, maybe we do have opportunities to collaborate with each other so that we can make things happen. So let's also use this particular platform to engage each other and to form partnerships that can make a positive impact in our economy. Any more questions, Maru?
Already, if you look at other areas or other service providers in this area, you look at an Amazon, you look at Alibaba that are operating cross-border, or in other sectors where there's Apple cross-border operations, there is the small print, and it's small as a print, but it's a long document. I've tried to go through those documents as a lawyer. I cannot understand in terms of the law how we can expect or to appreciate these things. But at the end of the day, you are bound. The moment you say yes, you are bound. It's a legally binding document. And you'll find that when you read it, it's either, for instance, we'll say that if you look at the Apple one, it will give the jurisdiction of the US, and then outside of the US, it may say then is the UK or the European. We will see in those documents. So if you are going to deal with it as where do you have an advantage? Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, our legislative frameworks in Africa are still very weak, and they have not caught up with these areas. It's important that as lawyers and as business entrepreneurs, you engage with the legislative framework and to understand how you can keep some of the jurisdiction. I know, for instance, in arbitrations, I'm an arbitrator, most of the time we find contracts saying that although the area of jurisdiction is in Africa, although the parties are operating in Africa, but the legal jurisdiction is put outside of Africa. And we know that in terms of exchange rate, that's expensive. We know in terms of geographic distance is expensive. So it is a disadvantage to agree to such terms. It's a critically important point that you make.
Okay. Thank you, Ma'am Thandi. Okay, I'm going to ask you, Ma'am Thandi, in these times that we're going through, I mean, as young professionals and as entrepreneurs, what are the 5 nuggets of advice would you give us? You know, broadly put, so in our career space, in the economy, in our entrepreneurial journey, what 5 nuggets of advice would you give for us?
Thanks for that question. I always relish having to deal with this question. Despite anything that you may think, we were once young, and we also faced the same challenges. The first advice I would give in relation to a young professional is whether you are single, but this talks particularly to young professionals who are in a relationship, whether you are living together or you are married in whatever form, is that it is important to have conversations. As a woman professional myself, I've had who started her career in the early 80s in a traditional, very male-dominated environment. You find the challenges of trying to advance yourself that they're obstructed all the time. And the obstructions tend to start in the home because there's no clear communication and understanding of what patients and what are the ambitions of both parties. For instance, I give this example. One of my partners is married, and they had 3 sons who are about the same age now. And they decided early on that the husband was an engineer, was going to be the one who stays at home, and the wife was going to be the one who is going to be the financial provider because she could in that environment. And because they were bringing up boys, they decided that a father figure was a stronger one to be at home. And that worked very well. And this is now over 35 years of marriage. So those are very important in a young professional couple, is that when we are young, we look at all the demands, particularly family demands, material demands. As Africans, we're looking beyond our nuclear family. It is important that you already think for the future. Start saving as early as possible. It is very important, and we always in my household talk about the 10 Rand or $10 that you split into 3 times. And the 1 is the one that you save. So you can split the other 9 into various ways, but the $1 or 1 Rand is the one that you save. So that is my second advice, because that will hold you in good stead in terms of discipline, in terms of the proverbial rainy day. The third advice that I would like to give, because you asked me for 5. The third advice that I would like to give to young people is that you have to always look at the next level. You must always make sure you skill yourself. You upskill yourself to make yourself ready for the next opportunity. What I've seen in the work environment, particularly for Black people and Africans in that sense, in a very cosmopolitan environment, and women particularly, is that they can't sell themselves. So you find that your colleagues move faster than you. Whilst your skills may be the same, your experience, you may even be working harder, but somehow you are invisible. Find ways to make yourself visible. So it's different ways. You must find ways to network. You must find ways to make sure that what is your work is attributed to you. Nobody steals your work, as it were. So that is very important in the workplace. The fourth, for me, critical, as I was a professional, having young children, was to put systems around me to enable me to advance. What is maybe seen by Europeans as unusual is that in Africa, throughout, because of the levels, different levels of poverty and education, we can have fair domestic work, housekeeping. Make sure that you've got the right people. I'll give a simple example. When you're a young professional, you are trying to advance yourself, your kids are starting school. Make sure that in the $9 that you have, you get an au pair or somebody who can make sure that they help your kids, so that when you get home, you are able to play with them and not be wrestled about cooking, kind of things into your lifestyle to ensure that as a professional you can give as much. Because I know young professionals says we can't do it all. Of course, you can't do it all on your own. You need the support systems. And Granny cannot be that support system. She can help, but she can go so far. And lastly, in Africa as young people, this is your legacy. This is your legacy. If you don't take this COVID-19 as an opportunity to say, as Africans, whether you are in the diaspora or you are within the geographic boundaries of the continent, how can we uplift this continent? We complain about corrupt leaders, we complain about systems, but how can we? I always give the example of South Africa, and it could happen to any country, that the generation of Nelson Mandela, they fought for freedom, and they were fortunate to hand it over to us. The next generation tried to give South Africa an economic platform. They haven't done it for everybody. But it's now up to this generation to say, what is our contribution, having received the political emancipation, to economic emancipation? If you don't do that, entrepreneurs from outside will come and exploit the continent all the time. And it's up to us to say, how can we make sure that the continent advances? We've got the next 30 to 50 years. If we don't do that in the next 30 to 50 years, you'll always be the dark continent. So I hope those 5 will help you to think through the next post-journey.
Thank you, Ma'am Thandi. You've actually said a mouthful, and most of the advice that you've given actually touches home. I mean, most of us can relate with the advice that you just given. Do we have any questions from our participants?
Currently, we don't have questions pertaining to the themes that we had touched on. We did have a question with regards to what constitutes a good leader from Masechava, I believe, in South Africa. However, given the interest of time, I think you have also covered some key nuggets. I would like to patch over to Idu to maybe share some words from his side.
Thank you very much, Maro. I'm just wondering, how much time do we have left so far? Because I actually would like to ask, our friends, in Kenya and in Ghana, just to give us a quick sense of what's happening in their countries and how they are, handling the current situation. I think without any further ado, Wakesho, shall we hand over to you? after which I will hand over to Karina in Ghana. Thank you.
Hi, Itu. So, speaking from my side as a lawyer, and probably in general, things are a bit slow. A curfew in place and a partial lockdown kind of situation. Most of us are working from home. And so, as Mom said, it's we're all trying to be agile and to adapt to the situation. Most of us have, stayed in the box, like trying to find other opportunities, whether in business, to try and engage with each other. Also, as she spoke about, I've seen a lot of these webinars are taking place. So we are also taking the opportunity to keep learning, to keep adding new skills. But overall, I know there's just the sense that this has to, end soon for us to, go back to life as it used to be. But then again, we've said this is the new normal. So taking up all the lessons that have been learned now to the future.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you very much, Wakesho. Shall we have Karina in Ghana or any?
So to give a bit of an update, we had partial lockdown of cities around Kumasi and surrounding areas, but it was lifted 2 weeks ago on Monday. So we're slowly adapting to the new normal. And to be honest, when I look at the response here in comparison to the response of some of the European countries and the US states, I think we're doing quite well. So masks are mandatory. At all kind of public stations or ATMs, you have to wash your hands, you have to use hand sanitizer. I know that there's a number of organizations in Ghana that have adapted and are now producing hand sanitizer and they're producing face masks. But our numbers are still rising. So right now we're at around 2,074 and with only 17 deaths though. So I think we have a while to go, but on the whole, I think our government have shown leadership and strength, and so let's see what the new normal looks like here.
I know we've got some people who from our continent but based in London, and I know we also have one of our greatest friends, in Australia, in Victoria, Alan McLean. Shall we start with anybody in London just to give us a quick synopsis? Somebody raise your hand. Okay, if we don't have anybody coming in, and then I don't know. Let me see. I'm just actually checking, the participants here. Is Alan still on?
Yes, he's still with us. Let me try and then rope him in.
Want to please to share something with us on his side in Australia?
Our federal national cabinet met today, and they've decided to meet again next day. See some restrictions eased. We've got basically self-isolation, essential travel only, pubs, restaurants all closed, even our iconic shopping centres have been closed. The government has introduced an app called COVID Safe. This is an app where been obviously questions about it. It works on a Bluetooth system where it'll simply register any phones near you. And then if one of those people that went near you later is tested positive for COVID-19, the health authorities can then track who was near that person via the phone and send you an alert to say that you need to go and get tested. The government, they will proceed to these restrictions if they get 40% of the population signed up. At the moment, after 3 days, there's been 3.5 million people download the app. It's a long way to go, but the government is reassuring everybody not tracking your movements. It's simply going to help us track you if you're exposed to COVID in another way. Our different states and territories are doing things a little bit different, but we have had a national cabinet formed, which means that the Prime Minister and the Premiers of each state are meeting pretty much weekly to try and be consistent. Schools have been a big area of discussion. The Federal Chief Health Officer is saying that schools are safe for children to return, but in Victoria they're saying not yet. So there's still a bit of an issue about schools, and also, of course, sport. Most sports have been closed, and there's talk now May, June, they'll perhaps open to close stadiums. So that's what's, and of course the economy. I guess when I say we're heading to double our unemployment rate, which will be 10%, that probably may sound very low to you, that we did have an unemployment rate of 5%, and it's now predicted to go to 10%, and the government's predicted to have $1 billion debt by the time this is all over.
Perfect, no, terrific. Thanks, Alan. We really appreciate your input. We kind of like now have a sense of what's happening, around the world. I'm not sure if is Olu, are you around? Are you still logged in? Can you give us a sense of what's happening in London? Okay, that's fine. If Olu is not able to come in and give us a sense of what's going on, in his where he's currently, based, I think let's hand back to you, Koketso, so that we can carry on with the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Itu. We've actually come to the end of our program if we don't have any more questions. I'd like to extend my gratitude towards Ma'am Thandi for taking out time to engage us on this topic. For most of us, it has been eye-opening, especially the points where you've mentioned that if we don't do something now for our country or penetrate specific markets, start your entrepreneurial journey, then the time it's either now or never, because this is your time to make your mark. So in that regard, Ma'am Thandi, thank you so much. Okay, the questions that are coming in have to do more with the organization than the themes. So we'll take that offline. Guys, I am noting your questions. I think they will be addressed in the Pan-African Leadership Network Forum. Yes, but in general, Ma'am Thandi, thank you so much for taking out time to be with us. If there's nothing else, guys, I'm going to have to say this is the end of our webinar.
Oh,
yes, Itu? Yes.
Thank you very much. Just a few announcements. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I must thank Advocate Orleyn, for making time, to be with us this morning, and also, sincere gratitude, to Wakesho and all our friends in Kenya, Karina, Eko, Olu, and all our other friends, in West Africa. Alan, thanks for coming in. I know it's dinner time, for you now, in Australia. What's going to be happening going forward? We are planning on having these webinars, at least one and perhaps once or twice in a month. And then there'll be different themes that need to be covered. We needed to kick off with the one today's theme on professionalism, those who are entrepreneurs, things that really affect our pockets. But you'll know that also Advocate Orleyn talked about relationships, be it husband and wife at home, or those who are living together, that type of thing. And then most importantly, how do women navigate, through these things and actually advance themselves, in a male-dominated, environment. So some of the themes, let's say, I think in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have somebody who will pretty much, talk about, our male-female relationships and how to make sure that, especially as African men, we're very supportive, towards, African women and women in general. I think on that note, I will just leave it there and say once again, thanks everybody for coming in. And I will leave it to you, Cricket, so, to wrap up. And guys, please, Maru Etsane, Jeanette Masirumule, and of course, Cricket, have done so well. And thanks again, to you guys. And then, let me just leave it to you, Cricket, to wrap up, and we can all log out.
Okay, Mam Thandi, just last question for me. If people want to get in touch with you, how do we get hold of you? Are you on LinkedIn or how do you prefer us to engage you?
I try to be with it and be on a number of platforms. I'm still getting myself on Instagram because I'm told that must be the in platform. I'm not there yet, but I am on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook. So I'll be happy to engage with people. And I really would thank you for inviting me to participate. I enjoy engaging with young people because I believe it keeps me young, and hopefully we can share because there's lots of experiences from the young to us older people or mature people and from us to the young. So really you are doing a great job, and thanks Itu for keeping the flag all these years and continuing to engage young people. All the best.
Thank you, Mam Thandi. To everybody, please stay safe. And thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.